What's up, guys? It's Rey-Jay back with another video, and in this one I want to break down what's happening with SPY, Tesla, Nvda, the QQQ, and a couple of other tickers. On break down what's happening with the market as far as you have important developments on the charts, what you should be watching for as time progresses. But just note that I am not a financial planner, so take nothing I say as financial advice. And also, if you guys can, please smash the like button. It not only benefits me, it benefits the entire community as a whole. Anyways, now let's talk about what's happening with the markets. As you guys can tell, the market is still in the green as we're seeing a lot of buyers stepping in, and the Aapl market push all the way up to some key resistance levels. But the question is, will we break resistance and continue to push to these highs, or will the market get a big rejection? I'll give you guys my opinions and insights in just a couple of minutes. And please note that for the week that's coming up, there's not really a whole lot of data coming out from Monday and Tuesday, but things become very serious on Wednesday through Friday. On Wednesday, okay, that's going to be August 21st, we have the FOMC minutes coming out. That's going to be very important. On Thursday, we have the PMI data report. That's going to cause some high volatility. And then for Friday, we have Jerome Powell giving a speech. So Wednesday through Friday will be very important. But then for tomorrow, it's going to be Monday, August 19th, 2024. We have some very, very minor data coming out. So this gives the market some freedom where it's not going to be just solely dependent on just like data and such. So I just want to make it clear that in the morning, we have Waller giving a speech from the Fed. Then after that, we just have a bunch of bill auctions at 11:30 a.m. And that's pretty much it for now. There's nothing else that's too crazy coming out for Monday. Right now, the market thinks there's about a 75% chance we get a 25 basis point cut and a 25% chance we get a 50 basis point cut for now. That's what the market's pricing in. That's what the market's thinking. We have FOMC in just about 1 month from now, so it's going to be very important, especially when Powell gives a speech on Friday. Now, for earnings, there's not really much that's too significant. For Monday, we just have very, very minor ones. Nothing too crazy, in my personal opinion. Tuesdays when we have a lot of retail like Lowe's coming out, and then for Wednesday we have Target, Macy's, TJ Maxx, and a few others. Not to mention Peloton and Ross and Red Robin on Thursday. So very, very minor earnings for the week. Tuesday through Thursday will have more significant ones, but everything else is very minor, nothing too crazy. Anyways, with that out of the way, what's affecting the market right now? The answer is resistance. So the market has been trying to push. As you can see, this trend is bullish on SPY. It's making higher highs and higher lows. And then when you look at the weekly time frame on SPY, the last 2 weeks have been very, very bullish for SPY, getting nice bounces. So generally, this does lead us to the conclusion of more potential upside. But the question is, will we get an initial reaction to the downside before we continue higher, or will we not end up doing that? Well, I just want to bring to you guys' attention this inverse head and shoulders like structure that's kind of forming on our 4-hour time frame. And that's also leading to a lot of people looking at the markets differently. So it's right over here. As you guys can see right here, this is like a possible left shoulder here. This could be our right shoulder. Then we could be forming our right shoulder. Sorry, this is our left shoulder. This is the head, and then we could be forming like a right shoulder. Or if we break resistance, we could just continue higher. So what is my view of the market? How do I see things kind of like developing right here? And it's actually very simple. So on SPY, we basically have this zone right here, this 555 to 556 area. This is going to be our tough resistance. I think it's possible we go a little higher. We might get very close to this. So I think we could go a little higher for Monday, but it's going to depend if we could break this or not. So if we do break this resistance, let me make this very simple to see. If we break like this and we start pushing for this resistance, if we could crack this, I think that this imbalance right here, this bar right here is going to be pushing us back up towards the 560 area. If we could break above 556, that's your bullish case. And then the bearish case is we kind of push up to resistance near 556 and we kind of get a rejection. Basically, you'd be looking at 552 as support, followed by 549.5. If 549.5 breaks, SPY will be dipping to the lower 540s, and then that opens the doors for a possible right shoulder like this that could be forming before we continue higher going into FOMC and Nvidia's earnings, right? So the question is, will we just break resistance and continue higher, or will we hit resistance and reject and form the inverse head and shoulders? If we have this left shoulder here, we have the right shoulder, and then we have our EMAs down here, which is where the gap fill is. So I marked where the gap is right here. This is where this level comes from, that gap on SPY to fill. You can see it on the daily, or at least it's very, very close on the daily. So this is the gap I'm talking about. Right over here on the daily, we have this big gap. If we do lose 549.5, we might fill that gap and then continue. So it depends, guys. I mean, right now, okay, there's no sign of us getting a rejection. So don't just say, hey, we're going to reject. There's no sign quite yet. So I think what's going to happen to SPY, and make sure you watch your levels just to be safe. 552 and 549.5 are two key supports. 549.5 breaks, we turn really bearish. We might see a bigger drop. If we break 556, we could be looking for a bigger push and turn bullish. So watch those resistance levels. I think what's going to happen is this: SPY is going to attempt to get very close to 555 to 556, and then there's going to be a big reaction. This reaction will depend on if buyers could really try to break things. It's a little tricky for me to predict this because so far the chart's just pumping to resistance. So I think we're gonna go a little bit higher, and then we'll have to watch what kind of reaction we get on SPY if we do get some kind of rejection or not. Notice that we did reject off 555 and 556 two times. So there's going to be a risk of us seeing some kind of move to the downside. There's a risk of that if we don't break 556. So I think we go a little bit higher and then we'll see what kind of reaction we get from there. It is possible we're forming a giant inverse head and shoulders. It's also possible that we might dip a little bit. We may not dip all the way. We might just get a small retracement and just continue higher. So it depends. But I think we're going to go a little higher. Then we'll have to see what kind of reaction we get. Why do I think we might go a little higher? It's also because of ES. When you look at ES like this, you will notice that, excuse me, we also have this imbalance over here. So like right here, we have this imbalance around just under 5,600. And I think that we're going to be pushing for this level right here. So I think we'll get very close to 5,600 and we'll see if we get a rejection to form an inverse head and shoulders, or if we just break through this and start squeezing. It all depends on a lot of different factors. So we'll see. Make sure you look at support also around the 5550 area. I have a feeling that if we lose 5550, there's going to be a bigger drop coming all the way down to, I'm sorry, if we lose 50, we're going to be dipping down to 5,500 flat. That's going to be causing a big drop. If we break 5,600, there's going to be a bigger pump coming all the way up towards 5,650. Now, we could be forming kind of like an inverse head and shoulders, but regardless of that, I'm just going to say this: be patient. We look bullish for now. We're going to push a little bit higher, probably try to fill this imbalance, and we'll see if we break through this and start trying to fill some of these imbalances to the left, or if we fail to do so and make a little retracement move. So look for a little bit more upside and see what kind of reaction we get. Same thing with SPX. I'll be looking at 5560 as our resistance. If we break that, we have this other imbalance to fill around 5580. If you reject, you'll be dipping back down towards 5528. Now, we've been pumping very nicely on SPX. We still look very bullish, but look at this resistance as we get closer to 5566. Might go a little higher, and we'll see if we get a rejection or not. We could be forming an inverse head and shoulders as well, so give this some time. For Bitcoin, we're trading kind of within this range. We're actually making lower highs right over here. If we lose 59,300, we could be dipping all the way down towards 58,000. And if we end up breaking through, we have to try to break past 61,000 to turn bullish. As of right now, we're kind of making lower highs, so I do see a risk of this dipping lower. So we might be retracing to 58,000, maybe consolidating. So I do see a risk of that on Bitcoin, in my personal opinion. For Nvda, we look bullish, making higher highs and higher lows. We're doing a great job. But the issue I see with Nvda is the fact that we still have this gap to fill up here. We haven't fully filled this gap yet. So I think that despite the fact that we're at this resistance around 125, we might go a little higher for at least 126 to fill this gap. And if that breaks, our next target is to be all the way up towards 129. So I think we're going to be watching 125. If Nvidia does reject, look at 121.5 as critical support. But I think this might go a little higher, and we might try to fill this gap towards 126 before we see some kind of reaction on Nvidia. So watch for that very carefully. I am still seeing upside potential. Now for Tesla, Tesla looks very bullish right now, trying to make higher highs and higher lows. If we close above 208, I will turn a little bearish, and I think we're going to be coming down to fill this imbalance. So watch 208 as a critical support. That's where our 20 EMA happens to be. And if we manage to hold above 220, we turn very bullish. We're easily going up towards these imbalances. So like 222 would be coming, followed by 225, then 230. High levels are going to be coming if we break and hold above 220. Now, in my opinion, if we do retrace a little bit, it is possible to get a little touch of support. But as long as we hold above 210, we remain bullish. And as long as Tesla gets bought back up like it did on Friday, we're going to continue to pump. So it is possible we retrace a bit. We retest like 212, 210, and then we continue higher. And I think we might be slowly on our way for that 230 target. We'll see if we dip first and continue higher, but 230 does look like a nice target for the next 1.5 to 2 weeks. So it has a lot of potential to form a nice cup. Tesla still looks bullish in my opinion. So look for a little dip and then a continuation higher. I think that's very probable. Watch the levels I have marked over here and the levels I called out, but Tesla still looks bullish nonetheless. For NQ, just like that of SPY, and also ES, we still have this resistance up here. We're very close to it, around this 19,700 area. I think we could go a little higher to test it. Then we'll be watching to see what kind of reaction we get. Will we form an inverse head and shoulders, hit the resistance, and then reject back down towards 19,300 and continue higher? Or will we break this and start pushing up for these new highs towards 20,000? If we break 19,700, hold above it or close above it, we're easily going all the way up towards the 20,000 area. If not, if we can't reclaim that resistance, look for a little bit of a rejection. So I think we go a little higher, look at 19,700 and see if we reject or not. For the QQQ, in my opinion, I'm going to close these levels just to make this as understandable as possible. We have this resistance right up here. We're looking at this zone, red critical resistance right now at 475. Now, could this be a cup? And generally what happens is we do form like a handle, we get a little retracement. Watch 472 and 468 as two key supports. If 468 doesn't hold, we're going to be looking for a big drop all the way down to 464. I think that this could be forming kind of like a cup and handle or even like an inverse head and shoulders. So we'll see if you get a retracement and continue higher. If resistance breaks, we'll be pushing all the way up towards that 480 area to fill the gap. So we'll see. This could be an inverse head and shoulders that's forming. We'll see if we kind of retrace a bit then continue higher. Or if we break this resistance, we'll be going up to 480. So we'll see how it goes. But with this cup that's forming, just be careful, guys. It might retrace before it continues higher. One of the reasons I call that out is because of what I'm seeing on some other big tech stocks. So just be careful. Apple looks very bullish, making higher highs and higher lows, but we're approaching this resistance right over here. This resistance is going to be a little bit tough for Apple, so it might go a little higher before it hits this. I'm looking right over here, very close to about 226.5, maybe closer to 227. In that 226 area, to 227, I think we might be testing resistance, and we'll see if Apple rejects here or not. So if we do get a little rejection, we could retrace to about 223. If not, to 220, then continue higher. And if we break through that, we're going straight up to 230. So I think the chart is bullish. It's going to be trying to break this eventually. The question is, do we get an initial rejection down and then continue higher, or do we break this resistance and start filling these imbalances up to 230? I'll be watching that level very carefully. It's going to give us what we need to know, but the best thing to do is just be patient, wait, and watch that resistance around this 226 to 227 area. Do we get that rejection, start dipping first, and then continue higher later, or do we break through this and just start to continue this squeeze? It all depends on a lot of different factors. For Palantir, the chart looks a little bit more like we're hitting some tough resistance around 32.5. That is one of the levels I called out. If we break that, we're going up towards, we'll get very close to 234, I think, if we do break that. So I think that if it does get a little retracement, we could be looking at support right here around 31.5. Might retrace a little bit before it continues higher, but still doing a good job at holding up. For others out there, we also have Supermicro doing a great job at trying to rebound. We're going to be looking at resistance around this area, very close to about 640, maybe a little bit under 640. If we break this, our next target is going to be all the way up towards 660. And if we reject here, look at our 50 EMA 604 as support. If we don't hold 620, look at 604. If that breaks, this imbalance will fill towards 580. So that's going to be the next support down here. So I think that with this setup, we are forming a nice cup, but the question is, are we going to form like a handle? Are we going to come back down and retest our 50 EMA, then try to bounce off that? I do see a risk of that if we don't hold above 640. So we got to hold above 640. If we don't do that, we're going to retest 604, and then we could bounce off that. So we'll just have to wait and see. For Rivian, we look a little bit bearish. I want to give you guys a heads up about Rivian. The setup is not that great. We have a bearish wedge that's forming. We got to reclaim 14.21 to get back up here towards almost 15, maybe like 14.8 to 15. And if we can't do so with this bearish wedge that's forming, there's going to be a risk of us retracing all the way down towards 12.5. So with this bearish wedge, I think there's a risk of us dipping all the way down towards the 12.5 area. And there is a risk of Rivian getting a rejection. But I just want to say that despite that, it's still holding the support. So make sure you watch for confirmation if this support ends up holding or not. If we lose the support right here around this low 13 area, our next target is going to be into the 12. So just be careful. I think we're easily going to be dipping down to 12.5 personally, but we'll see if it holds support. For so far, forming a nice cup-like structure, but just know 7 is going to be a resistance worth watching. If we hold above 7, so we have this previous support becoming resistance right around 7, so like right over here. If we break through this area, we could be going all the way up towards 7.3. If we don't hold above 7, look for 6.93, then 6.8. This chart is favoring upside. That's going to be a very, very nice move if we hold above 7. So I'll be watching to see if that holds. We're doing a good job so far. We look a little bit more bullish. We're watching to see if we hold above that key support. The Russell looks very, very nice to me. We have these gaps to fill. So if we do get a little retracement on Monday or Tuesday, it's a buying opportunity for a big pump that's coming to fill these gaps. I think we're going to fill the gap to 216. We also have this imbalance to fill around the 223.5 area. What I think is going to happen is this. We're either going to, okay, and this is one of my favorite setups right now. We're either going to do this where we get a breakout from this consolidation like this, and we just continue to push, and we fill this gap up to 216. It's either going to just do that before it continues higher, or what could happen is we get a little retracement first to our EMAs. We retest them in the 209 area, kind of consolidate, shuffle a bit, and then later on during the week, maybe after the FOMC minutes or whatever the catalyst is, we start pushing back up to these highs into the 220s. We'll see if we retrace a bit first towards our EMAs and then pump or not. Just watch 209 as critical support. If 212 breaks, look at 209. If we lose 209, there's going to be a risk of us dipping even lower, all the way down to about 207. That's where our imbalance happens to be. And then if we hold above 209, we could try to bounce. And if we break past 214, we're looking for that gap up for 216. So those are your levels. Will we retrace a little bit and then bounce, or will we just bounce from here? Nonetheless, the chart looks bullish. Keep that in the back of your guys' minds. This looks very bullish to me still. It looks very, very nice. So it's favoring upside. We also happen to have this trend line that could be drawn like right over here, just like this. This is like where our support happens to be. So see how this second line right here, I'm going to make this yellow so it's easy for me to like color code these. See this yellow line, how it's kind of riding this trend line. That could be our support. If we do retrace towards that, it could try to bounce, continue higher. So I'll be watching for that nonetheless. For others out there, we have AMD. AMD is looking a little bit more bullish. I think that this may attempt to push for our 200 EMA. That's going to be around 151.5. I think it looks bullish, and I think it's very favorable we get up there. So it looks pretty good as long as we hold above 148. So it looks pretty good. Could we dip first and then continue higher? Just continue from here? Yes, but nonetheless, it looks nice. ARM is looking pretty good. We could retest 126 though before it tries to continue. We also have these key levels to watch for, especially this like support. So it might retrace towards 127 and then continue higher. But nonetheless, this imbalance will fill, and I think it's bullish. Might dip and then bounce. Coinbase, same thing. We got to hold above 203. If we hold above 203 on Coinbase, we're going to be looking for a push for 210. If we don't hold above 203, we're going to retrace to 198. This chart is favoring upside from a technical standpoint. Amazon looks bullish from a technical standpoint, but we might retrace first and then continue higher. We're making higher highs very nicely, and I'm seeing some signs that Amazon might reject here. 177 is going to be a tough resistance, so I think we might come down here where this trend line is towards 175. If that doesn't hold, 173 is coming, but then we could bounce off that and continue higher to slowly push into the 180s. So there might be a little retracement on Amazon and a bounce, so watch for that. For Meta, we might be testing 525. If we lose that, we could be dipping down towards about 516. There might be a little dip on Meta, but then we'll see if we bounce off this support. Actually, we have support at 520 and then 516, so I'll be watching that very carefully. That's going to be very key. So like this level right here, I'd be looking for as our key support if this green EMA does not hold. So I'll be watching this very carefully on Meta. We might retrace to 525 if that doesn't hold 520, and then we'll see if we bounce off that or not. Same thing with Microsoft. I think we're going to be dipping to about 415. If 415 does not hold, we're going to be dipping all the way down to about 408. If we hold 415, we could try to bounce. So watch that very carefully. Google, it's also rejecting off the 166 area, our 50 EMA. Look at 163.8 is support. We might retrace towards down. We'll see if we bounce, but it's just very range bound. So see how some big tech stocks like Amazon, Meta, and Microsoft are showing some signs of downside. That might slow the QQQ down a little bit, and that's why I'm a little bit more cautious with that. Just for a few more, DJT, it's on a big downtrend. We need to reclaim at least 24.15 to turn back up. Otherwise, we're continuing to look bearish. It might actually dip towards 22, so it still looks bearish to me. The VIX has dipped quite a bit, but it's approaching this support right here. I want to say that the gap is about to fill in the VIX, so it might dip a little bit more because the market may pump a bit as well into the low 14s. But we will be watching to see if we get a bounce because the last time the VIX hit the low 14s, it bounced. So we'll see. I think the VIX is going to dip a little bit more because the market may pump a little bit more as well, uh, dragging the VIX lower. But then we'll see if the VIX gets a bounce later on, if the market does get a slight rejection. And the 10-year is also testing resistance at our 20 EMA at 3.92. If we break this, we're going up towards 4. This is going to be heavily dictated by the FOMC minutes. This retraced a bit because of other factors, but we'll wait. The dollar has been dipping quite a bit. It still looks kind of bearish, which is bullish for the markets. But we're approaching the support around this 102.2 to 102.4 area. Notice the dollar did bounce a couple of times off this. This does also kind of resemble a inverse cup and handle. So there's different ways to interpret this. We'll see if the dollar bounces or not. But nonetheless, the dollar is still kind of like on a bearish trend. And it still looks bearish to me, especially after the situation involving the yen. So we'll see. I just want to make it very clear the dollar is looking bearish, so that could be a good sign for the markets to bounce. Maybe the markets get, if they do retrace, it might be a small retracement, then we get a big bounce. That's another possibility. So the dollar is still indecisive, but looks kind of bearish. So I just want to call that out. So what's my view of the markets? The market has approached some tough resistance. I think that many indices may attempt to break the resistances instantly. And if it is possible, we do that. But there's also a risk of us retracing a bit first before that. So we'll see how things go. With that being said, thank you all so much for listening. Have a great day. I'll see you guys tomorrow before the market opens. And peace out.